Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff Needell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid. Today we go around the world of motorsport, from Formula One in Canada to Indycar in America, from Supercars in Australia to Superformula in Japan. We've got MotoGP in Germany, British touring cars in Britain, plus what else? British GT and British Superbikes, but there's no NASCAR.
No NASCAR.
There's no NASCAR. And at the end, I want to play you something that I find just unbelievable. It's a Dan Ticktum rant, the rant of all rants.
Rant? They're all old. He doesn't rant anymore. He's been very clever.
I did. I missed it, but it was the biggest rant I've ever heard, the biggest insulting rant I've ever heard, and it was just post-race at Jakarta. But we'll come on to that at the end. Let's kick off with Formula One.
I'm now intrigued to get to the end. Right, let's get through things quickly. I never heard about this tag team. Anyway,
Canadian Grand Prix. There's a lot to talk about here. We need to start with qualifying. Very unsettled conditions. We had rain, we had sunshine, we had all sorts going on. Inevitably, it was just one of those bizarre qualifying that really gets people excited and anything can happen type thing. Well,
I was about to say the same as you. You know, yet again, qualifying was the most exciting part about the Formula One again. There was impeding of penalties and poor old the Hulk, losing his second place because he was speeding under the red flag conditions. And again, I mean, we keep on talking about, there's more excitement when there's less grip, as always. And so everyone wants to add grip, these bloody aerodynamic cars. And it just proved yet again that when it's more down to the driver and less down to the chassis you have underneath, we had some amazing results coming out. And I think you have to give credit again to Red Bull and Max, that not only does Max have the skills and Red Bull the car, but again they get the tactics right. And they mucked up again somehow with Perez, who managed to not get the right tyres at the right time. But yet again, through all that everyone else panicking everywhere, it was Max that came out on pole. But the whole second was fantastic, wasn't it?
It really was. He was a masterclass. And what a schoolboy error, speeding under a red flag. Really crazy error. So you're allowed to overtake on a red flag. So if there's a car struggling and they're coming in slowly, you're allowed to overtake them, but you're not allowed to speed. So schoolboy
How
error.
fast was he? I never. How fast was he?
I don't know.
1 mile and a half.
Yeah,
a mile and a half.
But you're right. Max Verstappen. Oh, he's so annoyingly good. And Red Bull is so annoyingly good.
Yeah.
But we are going to come on to Sergio Perez in a minute, because we've had a bit of stick, well, I have anyway, about slating Sergio Perez. But he's just not good enough. It's as simple as that. If Max Verstappen was in the same position off the grid as him, I mean, he would have gone through the field. And
I'm afraid I'm with you. Sergio's had his time. He's had his opportunities.
Well,
I don't think he'd qualify. Just go back to finishing qualifying off for it. I mean, just Gasly was out in Q1. That was controversy with Sainz putting out Stroll out in Q2.
Well, for those who didn't see it,
Alex Albon fastest in Q2.
Ferrari, you cannot park your car at the end of the straight that people are doing best part of 200 miles an hour on. Poor old Pierre Gasly. I felt for him there.
But I think there still should be, the consequence of your crime should have a different penalty, because they're giving out 3 grid places. That's it for holding someone up in qualifying. But I think, sometimes you hold someone up, but they've still gone through the Q2 because they've already got a quick enough. So it's completely irrelevant. But I think, I said this on Twitter. People, no, because we had that problem in the past, when people got pushed off going around the outside on corners. Sometimes it was a 5-second penalty, sometimes it was 10. But I honestly still think for impeding, if you're impeding, literally stop someone progressing, as with Gasly from Q3, I think it should have been at least 10 places, to give him 3 places to Sainz for the most awful holding up. I mean, he was completely, didn't know where he was, middle of traffic, but a right old cock up of it all.
Carlos.
Leclerc, of course, didn't get through. But Ferrari basically, yet again, when the conditions cocked up. But as we found out in the race, their cars seemed to be quite good, but they didn't make the best of qualifying at all. But you were about to say, what about Perez again? You were about to kick in there.
Well, there's a Formula One writer. I'm sorry for not pronouncing your name correctly. Jacques Lopez, and he wrote this thing in Spanish about
probably Mexican. Probably Mexican. That's really upsetting.
Well, no, he wrote in Spanish, so they speak Spanish or Mexican, or same as the Americans speak English, or American English. But I didn't understand it. But somebody pointed out to me, and basically it says, "I just watched these 2 old jerks
What do you mean? Am I included in this criticism?
Yes. Slagging off Sergio Perez, saying that he shouldn't be racing. Now,
Correct.
Now,
hold on a minute. What do people do? What
Mr.
do people
Lopez
do?
was saved by the bell.
I'm doing a podcast.
Who's saved by the bell?
All right,
Tiff
who's that?
Talking.
All right, we'll call you later. Cheers, bye.
Clarkson. Was that Clarkson?
No, it was one of my sons.
So
continue this.
Mr. Lopez, and he's got a big history, 40 years of following Formula One. Pretty similar to me, not quite as much as you.
Experienced journalist.
Maybe he hasn't raced in Formula One like you, but it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. But how can you defend, however much of a super fan you are about Sergio Perez, how can you defend that he should be there? Because he is.
Well, hold on a minute. What does this bloke say?
He just said we're a couple of jerks and we got it wrong, and Sergio is amazing. And
he doesn't provide any facts to the fact that Sergio fell off in qualifying in Australia. He fell off in qualifying wherever it was. He fell off in qualifying in Monaco. How is he? Are we being biased by just reporting those facts and then suggesting
that we're a couple of jerks? Actually, you always stood up for Sergio. You're fair, but I was the one that said he should be replaced last week, so I should be the jerk. But look at it mathematically, if you do want some facts. The biggest gap, no surprise, mathematically is between Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. No surprise there, even though...
well, Stroll shouldn't be there either, so that's two that shouldn't be there. Well,
he should be there because his dad pays for it, and his dad owns the team, so good for him. But that's the biggest gap. There's 80 points. We're talking mathematically. Now, the second biggest gap is 69 points with Max and Checo, which is a bigger gap than every other driver gap put together.
This is current positions in the table.
Current positions in the table. But it's not about that. It's just about having the best car, the best tool to do the job, and underperforming week in, week out. Then you get the likes of Alex Albon, who was booted out so quickly by Red Bull, wasn't given the opportunity that Sergio Perez has had. And look at him. Look at how good he was on the weekend. He was phenomenal.
Second on fastest in Q2.
Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But so I'm sorry, Mr. Lopez. Look, we value all feedback and opinions.
Tell him to write an opinion showing why we're wrong. Well, you can do it in Spanish if you can get the translation done. Explain to us where we're going wrong. We're seeing a driver in the equally fast car to Max Verstappen getting nowhere near him, apart from occasionally when Max has a cock-up or something or has an engine brake.
And there's no question that Max is a mercurial talent. We say that week in, week out. He's phenomenal. So we don't expect Sergio to be competing against Max necessarily, but he certainly should be doing a lot better against the rest of the pack in the car that he has. Back to the race.
Yeah, good. I mean, the trouble is, it was a good race, but it's only good really because that Canadian circuit is just so spectacular. I'm seeing Grand Prix cars going around there, bouncing off walls as George Russell slightly over-bounced off the wall. I mean, it's just so good when there are no track limits except for hitting something. And I know it's more dangerous like that, but you get that thrill. I mean, Alonso Fernando, that spark. Commentators actually didn't notice it live. I spotted it live. That spark of a chink as his rear tyre hit the wall that Russell later hit. And it just, that these guys are really on the edge. If they just go over a curb and over another curb, you don't feel there's any limits there being broken. So it's always good at Canada. But again, we had this very processional race once the pecking order of the former world championship was back in its correct order. Although, Mercedes were going quicker, the car was better, but, Fernando, the Aston's obviously a quicker car still than the Mercedes. So they're so equally talented, those three. So it was a procession out front, but the mid race, well, of course, with the hero being Alex Albon. He had a train when he finished seventh. I checked the results. There were 6 cars in his train, covered by 4.5 seconds. So there was this amazing pressure that Albon drove this race.
So clearly, the Williams is very fast on the straights, but not so fast around the corners. Would be my analogy because he didn't have DRS and all the others behind him. DRS.
It's so common though. You get the cars that haven't got the downforce. They're obviously quick in the straight lines. They're slow on the lap times, but they can hold off in the straight. Same with Haas has the same ability. I have to slightly praise Ferrari. They did a tactics that did work this time. They left their cars out when they came in for that first safety car.
How can you say that? Because again, the drivers are overruling the pit. And I know you need to get feedback from your drivers. But
there was a little bit of disagreement.
No, I don't want to box now. And so,
yes, there's still an element of anarchy going on. But at least they finished 4th and 5th, weren't they? So they filled in the next place. And Perez got up to 6th, Albon 7th, and the train behind him.
Miles back in sixth place. It was very flattering, sixth place. I know he stopped to get the fastest lap, which should not be allowed, to be able to stop a lap before to get
I
fastest
hate
lap.
points for fastest laps.
Yeah.
It's a farce. Fastest laps are farcical.
Well, I don't mind the fastest lap if it's achieved in the race, not pitting when you've got plenty of time.
Pitting is part of racing. Pitting is part of racing. Strategy.
Somebody mess up a pit stop when they're doing the fastest lap. Please have a wheel gun get locked or something and get no points, nil points. And speaking of pit stops, Red Bull, how are they so much better than everybody else?
I don't know. I don't bother to find out. You're on it. You're going to throw some stats at me for pit stops this time.
No
2.9 is 2.95 or 3.0 against
2.3, 2.2 for Red Bull.
2.2.
Mercedes for Lewis 3.4. Lewis came out of the pits. He was 9/10 slower than Fernando, which is why he nearly hit Fernando on the way out of the pits.
Oh yeah.
Someone like Red.
Did you see Fernando doing his amateur dramatics? I wiggle the steering wheel. Oh, I nearly hit him. No, you didn't. No, it was a safe release, Fernando. It was a very close to a danger, but it was a safe release. But no, you did manage to ham it up a bit to make it. Look at him. I nearly crashed into him. No, you didn't, Fernando. You didn't. Good for trying. So yeah, the funny thing about, we're going to move on to IndyCar, because I was caught between the two, both races at the same time. I'd watched the first 30 minutes of IndyCar live before Formula One. I went over to watch Formula One live, leaving the Indy recording. I watched the first 30 minutes of Formula One live. And then, to be honest, I went back to IndyCar and stayed there until the IndyCar race was over, and then went back and caught up with Formula One. Because on the second, there wasn't that much racing. Did I miss it? I mean, I watched the whole Grand Prix, albeit not in live. Do you feel the actual racing was?
There wasn't much race. There wasn't much racing at all. It's it's a renowned.
Just a track. It looks
not an overtaking track. But I think it's a great looking track. It's an exciting track. It's quite a fast track. But there wasn't much racing at all. Fernando and Lewis provided a little bit. Who would win in the same car? Fernando, Lewis, or Max?
I'm still Lewis, because Lewis sorted out Fernando at McLaren, although lots of controversial tactics going on. I mean, the youngster sorted out Fernando. I think the pecking order, it's like hundreds, probably Max, right now, at this stage in their lives, it has been Max, Lewis, Fernando, I would say, in the same car, judging with hundreds of a seconds apart.
I wonder what our listeners and viewers think. Please let us know below. We'll tag that as the question: who would win in the same car?
Yeah, where's our Dutch critic? I've just put Max as quicker than Lewis. Will that keep him happy for half a day or half a second? He'll come up with some other reason for me being racist and hating everybody, but never mind. So yeah, on to Road America. Unless you've got any more Formula One gossip or news.
Well, the only other thing was I just thought Jacques Villeneuve kicking his toys out of the pram about doing a lovely tribute helmet. Charles Leclerc wanted to do a lovely tribute helmet to his late father, Jules Villeneuve, and he said he should have asked me, and it's disrespectful.
Well, there was a bit of that. You can't. There's copyrights. People are earning money. Villeneuve's wife and mum are earning money out of Villeneuve stuff.
All right, let's go down state.
So I swapped over to IndyCar, and again, another great circuit made IndyCar look great, because that Road America is just one of the most it is the best road course in the world. And I watched all the testing and building. They were falling off. Well, this is what I love about IndyCar. The cars, they're driving these things up on a seat of their pants. And this beautiful, new, clean, black, very smooth surface the drivers loved, except because it was so new. Whereas the racing line got more and more grip as the weekend went on. If you went out to the racing line, it was on like not so much grip on ice. And what I loved was the fact they did all this money resurfacing the track, but they kept the same old curbs, same old bits of grass, same walls. They didn't bother with any upgrade at all to the safety. They were spinning off like mad. I think Colton Hurt had 3 spins during practice and qualifying. And in fact, even the top drivers, Alex Palau, the highly rated, we'll get on to later, he was the winner, and I'm always raving about him. And if I was a Formula One team manager, I'd be having Alex on my signed a contract as soon as I could. But he went off on his own, slammed into the barriers. And we had this horrendous shunt with Scott Dixon, who just spun at the Canada Cord or whatever is the slowest cord at the end of the back straight. And he was just sort of recovering on the inside of the track, and going very slowly. And he moved over to, I think it was Grosjean by 1 car by. And he didn't know a second car was coming, which was Will Power. They just wandered across the track and just took Power into the barriers with him. 2 of them had this huge shunt. It's a solid concrete wall about 20 feet off the track. There was none of that safer barrier there, because it wasn't a place where people crash. So both those cars had major rebuilds out of Palau's and Dixon's and Powers. So there was a lot of drama even before we got to the race. But it seemed like Colton Herta's race. Colton Herta qualified pole, and he seemed to the man to have it. And then just at the end of the race, Andretti's cocked up on their tactics. And did you watch the IndyCar race yourself?
I watched lots of racing over the weekend. I didn't watch IndyCar. I watched Indy Lights.
It was because there were 27 cars and just race everywhere. There's people banging wheels off on the grass, going back off the grass. Grosjean had about 3 spins and ended up he had a terrible weekend.
Much overtaking?
Yeah, well, yes, but in midfield, but lots going on, lots of happening here and there. I mean, Palou came through because, as I said, Herta was leading all the way, but they pitched him a lap earlier than everybody else. There's always the worry if you don't pit while you're in the lead and someone goes in before you and a full course of yellow comes out, you'll end up with the one that has to pit and then you'll be behind all those that pitted a lap earlier. So there's always a pressure of your leading to get that last pit stop done whilst the track is still green, so you won't get caught out with the yellow. But because they've pitted him like 1 lap earlier than sort of a safe fuel mileage, he had to lift and coast a bit. He didn't have enough fuel to go flat out to the end. So he dropped from 1st to 5th in the last, 5-10 laps. Palou came through to win. So a lot of tactics going on there, and Herta or his team pretty much lost a dead cert win. But the Brits aren't doing well out in IndyCar at the moment. Callum Ilott, that seemed to be really coming to the fore, looking strong, he's not even qualified 17th.
We both tipped him for doing so well.
I know, and he had been running top 10, but he can't seem to get his case. He's in a sort of very lower ranked team. He's not in the best team, but he had looked like he was coming good, but didn't.
I thought he'd do well on the circuits, on the tracks.
Yeah, but Road America, Jack Harvey used to be quick there, but he's having an awful time. He's with the Rahal Letterman team, which did so badly at Indy. But now, his teammate, Christian Lundgaard, this Danish kid, he qualified 7th, finished 7th. And Jack Harvey qualified 24th, went off into the barriers on a restart and ended up 26th. I mean, Jack's just having a miserable time. But no, Grosjean, go out to Grosjean. He spun a couple of times in testing and qualifying in the beach, in the gravel. He fell off in the race, had to be towed out the gravel, got him going again. But apparently in qualifying, it impeded Will Power by slightly moving over on the main straight as Will wanted to go past him. So Will Power, whilst moaning about the crash he had with Scott Dixon, moaning about the tracks when he went off on his own, the grass was too bumpy. So he had a moan about, mate, they got this, the circuit's crap and shit. And that Grosjean, I just want to punch him in the face. I'd love to see a Formula One driver say that. No reprimand. He just says, as for Grosjean, I want to punch him in the face.
So what penalty did Grosjean get for blocking him?
I don't know, you got one? No, nothing. A punch in the threat of a punch in the face. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I just thought it was a spectacular circuit and just so much racing going on throughout the field, colourful. And again, when you see we talk about the walls the good thing about Canada was the drivers kissing the wall or getting within an inch of a wall gives that blooming hell. And the same when you have an old-fashioned track and they get across the curbs and they in the dust and the dirt on the grass and the dust and dirt coming up, you then visually see that they're about to crash, maybe, they're in trouble. Whereas as soon as you go off into a tarmac, there's no puff of smoke, puff of anything, of dust.
It's a real sense of speed, isn't it, where you lose that sense of speed on television. Yeah. We'll come on to BTC in a minute for grass and...
I don't know what was going on there with track limits. I know I was mentioning it. Also, of course, Road America, Indy NXT, the sort of Formula 2 of IndyCar, where Louis Foster...
It's not Formula 2 of IndyCar. That's insulting to Formula 2. It's a long way down from Formula 2. Formula 2 is right up there, isn't it? Fast.
2.5. 2.5, do you think?
Yeah.
Quicker than three. You
think so? You think...
Look, it doesn't... Within their ladder, all right?
I'll find out lap time. I'll find out a similar lap time.
IndyCars are about 5 seconds lap slower than Formula 1.
Yeah, but we're not comparing against Formula. Yeah, okay.
What, you'd start? I'm just saying, in their league tables.
I would say Indy Lights is more like Formula 3 than
Premier
Formula
League 2. and Championship.
Not even 2.5.
It's their second division on the ladder.
Okay.
I don't care if it's slower.
Yeah.
Anyway, Louis Foster
just compared it to Formula 2. I think that's a bit insulting to Formula 2. I think it's more Formula 3.
Louis Foster, our front-running Brit, has had a miserable year. He's been knocked out. He's been on pole. Anyway, he's only qualified 5th, not so good. And he ended up on those races. He was battling for 3rd. And every move he tried to make to move up went wrong. and then he got penalised one place for weaving. Not allowed to weave, so he got told to give a place back. Which I love that system. You get on the radio, you're mucking about.
As long as they do it early, Tiff.
Yeah, straight away. It's going straight away. You can't
when they do it in Formula One 5 laps later. You think, what are you doing? What are you doing?
You can have a race director on a radio, give that place back now. Yeah. And if you don't, you get a penalty. But Jamie Chadwick had a much better qualifying. This was a series she's tried to do and prove. She was 9th out of the 18 in qualifying, which is her best by far. But then in the rest of the she didn't seem that aggressive. I think this is sometimes, aggression is a very important part of being a racing driver. I don't think Jamie's perhaps aggressive enough. And she didn't have a good first lap. There was a gap appeared ahead of her. The 9 cars, I think, were ahead of her. And so at the end of the straight, she had 2 people right behind her, and one tried to do a late lunge and pushed her off the track and out and dropped her back. Yeah, finished 15th for the runners.
Which she's finished around about 15, 16th.
Yeah, but having qualified 9th, we thought this is one, she could get a top 10 finish. But she had never a good first lap.
Just jump in there with a bit of female news as well. The fact that W Series went bust last week.
Oh, yeah, it went bust. What a surprise. I think we might have been saying that about the first weekend. They thought, where's the money coming from?
Here's $500,000, Jamie. Here's 300,000, Alice. Here's 200,000, Jessica.
Unbelievable. Just to say who won the Indian NXT, because I hate stories about, they always do that on the news, don't they? Someone crashed. Nigel Mansell crashed today. They don't say who won the Grand Prix. The American driver Nolan Siegel had his second win on the trot and now takes the championship lead in the NXT, which is the second division of American single-seater racing.
But
happy with that?
Not up there. Yes, it is. Correct.
Right. Down under, mate. Supercars.
Are you allowed to mock their accent?
What?
A lot of people get very annoyed if you mock their accents.
What?
This is what I love about the Aussies. You just said down under, mate. Supercar.
Mate.
This is what I love about the Aussies. Who cares less whether you say that or not? Who cares? Good on them, Aussies. We love you. My family are Australian.
The balance of power disaster that's going on between this new Gen 563, Gen 3, I think they are. The Fords haven't won a race, and they had another Chevy whitewash. Mark Winterbottom won the first race in a Chevy 1-2. Brock Feeney won the second race in a Chevy 1-9. Best Ford, only 10th. Third race, Jack LeBrock won a Chevy 1st to 4th. And they just can't seem to get the Fords. They play with the engines first. Apparently, one's a push rod and one's they've got a different engine concept, whether it's overhead cam or good old-fashioned push rod, I don't know. So the torque is different to the power. So then, revs, they got different torque and power, even though the power's the same max. They're at different rev levels. Okay. So they tried to change the engines, I think, by remapping them to try and give Ford a bit more of an advantage. And now apparently it's all about the Fords are wearing out their rear tyres quicker. They're getting much worse degradation in their rear tyres, which could be engine, too much torque in lower revs or too much torque in higher revs. Or now they look at the air revs. They're desperately trying to get the Ford balance. And this is, when there's only 2 teams in it, it's more obvious, isn't it, than when it's 5 or 6 at Le Mans, when you're trying to balance 5 or 6.
Or BTCC that we'll come on to in a moment with BMW, etc.
So, sad for Ford that Chevy still just whitewashed the whole year.
Yeah, but good for Chevy. Good for Chevy. And
but balance of power. Well, no, balance of power, you have to accept that the other cars will be allowed to come quicker to make the racing even. Then after Japan, crossed the Pacific Ocean. I can't do a Japanese accent at all. That would be disastrous. It's not across the Pacific Ocean. We're going up. We're still Pacific Ocean. We're going north, due north. Liam Lawson, of course, the Red Bull protege, which we are talking about, being a Perez substitute maybe, or Ricciardo, or in my opinion, go and get Palou from America and put him in a Red Bull. Anyway, he was leading the championship, but he only qualified 6th. And they tried a long-run strategy. In Superformula in Japan, you have to change tyres once. And I think it's 2 different compounds. It might not be. I'm not sure. I need to find out. Japanese tell me downstairs comments. And he went really long on the stint. So he had his fresher tyres for the last 10 laps. He came through from about 7th, but only got to 5th. And he's now lost the championship lead to race winner Ritomo Miyata, who won to take the championship lead from Liam. The only other news from Superformula, Japan, was Guido Alesi today after the race when he had another crash. He's been dumped by his team, Toms. He's been kicked out of Superformula, and I think his dreams of Grand Prix are over. because he's the son of Jean Alesi.
Yeah.
His mother's Japanese.
Yeah.
And he, to my mind, it annoyed me really that Alesi sort of went so far. He did 3 years of Formula 3, 2 years of Formula 2. That's 5 years. He became a Ferrari Academy driver, thanks mainly, obviously, to Alesi, not because he was super quick in Formula 3 or before. And he never really did. I think he had 4 wins. Like, he did have 4 wins in Formula 3, but I think they were all reverse grid races. I don't think he won one for the front. He did.
Sorry.
He went out to Japan.
Go on.
Sorry.
He went out to Japan.
He went out to Japan and he did. Hold on, I'm going to be careful what I say now. He did the equivalent second division of Japanese single-seater racing for a year. Glad we got that sorted out. Sort of like the Formula 2 of Japan, but obviously maybe not as quick or as slow. And he came second in that championship in 2021. He graduated to Superformula, but he didn't win a Superformula race. It was a weird weekend in Autopolis when it was raining, and he was doing the equivalent to Formula 2, but it's called Indy Lights. He was in the second division series and won the race. So he had experience of the track in the wet, whereas all the Superformula drivers didn't. And he jumped into a Superformula car and got on pole by help by that. Anyway, I feel it's game over for his dreams of been following his footsteps of his father as a Grand Prix driver.
Clearly, the boy can drive, but not quite like his father. Where was the? Sorry,
but it shows how hard it is. But it shows how hard, isn't it?
It's tiny margin.
Yeah, I know. Even with Alesi as your dad and Ferrari Academy help, unless you've really got that last tenth of a second, you're not going to make it.
Absolutely. And where was it in Japan? Sorry, Tiff. What was the track?
It was I don't know where it was. Forget where it was.
I was just going to ask whether I was just going to ask, have you raced there?
Suga.
Right.
Suga. I did race there.
Let's go
Japanese.
To Germany, to MotoGP, and I've got a question for you. Do you think Marquez, those jumpsuits that expand really quickly, do you think he has a sponsor of one of those race suits? Because he just crashes. I've never seen a bloke crash like it and continue. 3 times he crashed.
It was 5 at the end. 5 by the end of the weekend.
Three times in qualifying. He still qualified 7.
Free practice he crashed and had 2 in free practice. It's a sad weekend, really. I mean, it's what was being talked about before the race because he had this other. It was in the warm up, the last one he had in the warm up and race day, I think. And he had fractured his foot or his hand, one of the two. Got an X-rays, and there was talk that he was still trying to race. Qualified other way down the grid, hadn't qualified well, but he did in the end decide not to race. And so this whole thing, what do we do with Mark? And we talked about it last week. I pointed out that he was standing in this gravel trap in Mugello, shouting at his bike, having just tried to go around the outside of someone out onto the dirty bit of track on a bike that he knows isn't as quick as Ducatis. He knows it doesn't handle as well as a KTM. And yet Mark, by his very nature, just won't. He wants to win. He won't accept the fact that he's going to have to back off a bit because his Honda's not as quick at the moment. So he just runs the thing ragged and falls off it a lot. And so the people now say we need to save Mark from himself. We somehow got to you've got to stop racing until you give him a bike that can win. So, amazing. I mean, the 2 other Honda drivers were out of the race. They've both been fallen off and cracked bones and stuff. So, the Honda is just a difficult bike to ride, and yet Mark just refuses to accept that. So it's a great shame. He's such a character. He's always very good. It's the Saskenringen, this bull ring of a circuit. Amazing downhill, fast left-handers and a few hairpins. Spectacular, huge crowd surrounds it. German fans absolutely over the moon. It was mainly a 2-part story, really, Marquez sadness of not running. And then the great joy of both winning the sprint race and the Grand Prix. Only second Grand Prix win to this Spaniard, Jorge Martin. Spanish pronunciation. How do you pronounce the Spanish Martin?
Martin, I would say, yeah.
He, of course, riding a satellite Ducati, the Pramac team, privateer team, but they have identical bikes. And he had 2 brilliant battles with the championship-leading Italian Francesco Bagnaia on the factory Ducati, but beat him both times. Great rides. And he's now cut the lead to the championship down from 25-point gap to just 16 points now, as Martin chases Bagnaia. He was a Moto3 champion in 2018, but a very popular rider and very smooth and smart. But it was Ducati. I mean, the Australian Jack Miller, the KTM's always good. Both their riders give it 100%. And Jack Miller was third
riders give
in
it
one
100%.
sprint. Well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah.
And Johan Zarco, the second Pramac Ducati, came third they've been writing Zarco off, saying he won't have arrived next year, and now he's finishing third on the podium. So I think, but I mean, there were 8 Ducatis in the top 9 of the Grand Prix result. I mean, it's worse than Chevrolet and Ford in supercars. Jack Miller was the only one. Jack Miller was 6th. It was a Ducati 1 to 5, Jack Miller 6th, then Ducati 7 to 9 in the top 10. So bit of a problem in MotoGP. If another manufacturer dropped out, Honda obviously very embarrassed with Marc Marquez. Yamaha embarrassed that their French champion Quartararo, he's nowhere. They could pull out, and it's a great worry, really, MotoGP, that there is such a Ducati domination at the moment. But Susie will sort it out. Susie Perez, she'll sort it out, Susie.
It goes through phases. Look at Red Bull at the moment; they're having the most phenomenal run ever.
I know.
So it does go through.
But luckily, there are only two Red Bulls. I mean, it's a bit like having, you have 3 satellite teams, 6 more Red Bulls on the track. Then Alonso and Hamilton will be battling for 10th place. Moto2.
Go on.
Yeah, Moto2, I was just going to move on to Moto2. Another win for Pedro Costa, who's our great talent that we have discovered in Moto3 a couple of years ago when he dominated. He had a steady year in Moto2 last year, his first year, but now he's really looking like the star who everybody thinks he's going to be. Cruised to win in the Moto2. Once again, beating his Italian, the guy who's second in the championship, Tony Arbolino, who is still behind in the championship because Arbolino got out earlier in the series. I think the gap's down to, I don't know what, small. The whole contract thing we mentioned last week, Acosta, I think he's out of contract with KTM. They've got to sign him to have a MotoGP ride for next year by, I think, the end of June, or he's free to go elsewhere. So KTM is saying, we're going to sign him, but there's no space unless they sack Miller or the South African. Where's his name? Everyone knows what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So a bit of fun and games there. Sam, they had a great battle for third. Arbolino, they only just held on to second because Jake Dixon had a really qualified third, really coming good now. He had a slow start. We always thought Jake might be able to win the title this year, apart from, of course, Acosta being a bit of a target to beat. Because he fell off on the warming up lap in America, poor old Jake. And without that, he probably would be lying third in the championship. He's moved up to 4th in the championship now. Really strong ride at the end, nearly getting second place.
That's got to be the worst thing to ever do in a race, surely. On a warm-up lap.
I did it once.
Did you?
I haven't forgotten. I'm going to assure you, I haven't forgotten. Brands Hatch. I went through
How did you do it? Whereabouts on Brands? How?
Clearways. The old Surtees corner was a much sharper left-right because the road, when you come out of Graham Hill Bend, if you don't know it, you know Graham Hill Bend?
Of course I do, yeah.
Well, the road used to veer to the right and go behind where the pits are, right? It's the middle of the paddock car park, as it were. Yeah. So then the Surtees was a very long, looping left-hander before you turn right into the second half of Surtees, which is now a kink left-right, pretty much. Well, I lost it turning right just before Clearways. I went up the grass banks, there were nice earth banks in those. They threw an advertising hoarding, ended up parked on top of the bloody bank, looking across at the track. When I should have been on my way to the grid.
What car was it in? What were you racing?
Well, one of my Formula 4s. I don't know which one it was. I've forgotten. So anyway, Jake is really coming good, but he's to win a Grand Prix this year with the talent of Acosta and Arbolino and others. So it's a really tight season in Moto2. Sam Lowe's not so good. Qualified 6th, finished 7th. He was in a huge battle for 4th.
It was so tight. It was all really tight though.
As Moto3, our British boys, it's not going well. We had so much hope for this Vision Track Racing team, especially for Scott Ogden last year. He was qualifying 10th and looking good. The tremendous third place finish, dropped to 5th from infringement in the wet race in South America earlier this year. Fantastic. But in the dry, last year, the pressure got to when he started crashing the second half of the season, just trying too hard, a bit like Marc Marquez to move up. But he had a big crash in qualifying, which he didn't do a qualifying lap. I think he qualified 27th. And he managed to go back to 20th, but he doesn't seem that good yet at overtaking. Like the real top riders can get through the pack to the top 10. And I really feel sorry for him. And Josh Watley qualified 24th, finished 23rd. So don't know what we can do. Vision Track's a brilliant idea. They've sponsored these 2 British riders to go into Moto3, which we've had so little representation for so many years. So we have to wait and see whether they can sort themselves out. But it was a great win up the front. A very happy win for everyone, really. This Dennis Onchu, who's been a very spectacular Moto3 rider for a couple of years now, finally got his first win. I don't know after how many races. I think it's his second year or third year in Moto3. But he had a huge battle with the Japanese rider, Ayumi Sasaki. Really good run. But the two of them way out front, the usual Moto3 pack, they were just 5 seconds ahead. There was another pair, I think, in third and fourth, and another 5 second back, and then the massive pack that ran from about 10th place to 20th place. So good race, spectacular track. Not the most spectacular race of the year, but just little individual duels instead of a mass overtaking mania.
Can we now turn to a mass overtaking mania and go to BTCC, please?
Did you see any mass overtaking at the BTCC?
Actually, not really. It was a funny old weekend. It was a weekend of track limits.
Parade. BMW. Well, this track limits. Do you know the rule? I was watching.
I do know the rule.
How many times can you go in the green with a teeny bit of tyre? According to the rules now, that much tyre in the green is a mark. Now, how many times can you do that before you get this warning and then a flag? Do you know?
It's supposed to be 3 times.
Don't know, do you?
Get the black and white flag up 3 times.
3. So you do 3 of those. Because the Old Hall and Cascades, I mean, just every lap, you just saw cars coming out, wheels in the green, wheels. And David Addison, great commentary, him and Tim Harvey, and they mentioned sort of, they'll be watching the track limits, but they kept stom about it. They didn't keep on pointing out that's track limits. I was on the 10. That's track limits. That's track limits. That's track limits. If they're going to introduce this stupid rule, the MS UK, of dispatched tyre, they've got to deploy it in this headline series like BTCC. Because they're all the club races watching are saying, well, they're all over the bloody red. They're all in the green. There was no commentary. I think somewhere about 2 or 3 ride drivers got a warning. I think Ash Sutton did in the reverse grid race. No, he didn't do that because he didn't finish the reverse grid. But anyway, to me, I saw massive amounts of track limits being abused and no mention of people getting warned. So I'm a bit confused. If I was now racing, I wouldn't know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not. So we've got to know. Tim Harvey, get on to Tim. You find him. Anyway, there was a BMW parade the weekend. The cars shoot the track. They're trying to mess up the thing to try and do something by putting on a soft tyre, and then you have to do another race on a hard tyre or a medium tyre. But it just meant that everybody had the same strategy. So everybody did the first 2 races on soft tyres and then switched the hard tyre for the reverse grid race. So it didn't really split the pack up or would create any overtaking. But Jake, brilliant. First 2 just sorted out Ash. Ash Sutton was on pole for the first race and he managed to out-drag him with the BMW rear-wheel drive. Always still has that advantage off the line. And then, you had... It was just the same because we had Tom Ingram, same as at Thruxton, the sort of bridesmaid hanging in there. He had 2 thirds and a fourth, in the Hyundai, but again, he wasn't overtaking or being overtaken or attacked. So we got this sort of top 3, and he would have maybe been 4 out front, except Colin Turkington got done for having no fuel in his tank, well, not enough fuel after qualifying. So his qualifying time went, so he had 27th, which he then got to 9th in the first race. He actually started the second race 8th because Adam Morgan somehow got dropped 5 places. Maybe Adam Morgan did get a track limits warning. I don't know. But then he came from 8th to 4th in round 2, and reverse grid rate, he came through from 4th to win. So Colin Turkington made it a BMW 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, good for him. I mean, he was absolutely on it.
It just shows the dominance. It just shows the dominance.
He's not that much. He's a phenomenal driver. He's not that much better than the rest of the pack, is he?
No, but he's carved through the midfield. As I said, he got to. I don't know. He's quite quickly up to about 15th after 2 laps from 27th, I think.
And there was a safety car, which obviously helps as well. And, but still, very, very good.
So lots of scrapping in the midfield. There's always. It's a bit like Formula One, really. Very identical. In Canada we had the top 3 cruising around in order, and then a manic pack with Alex Albon holding everyone up. And it was a bit similar, in the midfield of the touring cars. I don't know who was holding who up, but there was a massive pack and everyone pushing and shoving and having a go, which was spectacular, entertaining. But it's also a shame you want those big dices out front for the lead, don't you, to make it an exciting race.
You do. And then you find it.
I don't know what they're going to do, to be honest. They don't know how they're going to equal it up or what they're going to play with, because obviously touring cars, they do play with regulations to try and make it more riders, more drivers having a chance to be up front.
your mate, the very feisty and exceptionally good driver, Jade Edwards. She has a bad luck in race 2. Race 3, the final race, she actually went the complete opposite way to everyone else.
Yeah, she was on softs.
She was on softs. But she didn't really make an impact. And Tim Harvey...
Well, she got up to about 16th, I think, from 27th. Yeah, she had a good race.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. But
I mean, there was a second... Apparently, it was a second lap quicker, the soft tyre. Yeah. So it was quite a big difference in tyres, but all the front runners chose the same strategy, as you expect they would.
And the championship leader, Ash Sutton, in race 3, of course, was taken out or took himself out, one of the two, whichever way you want to look at it, whether Ash fan or not.
Squeeze by Mr. Ingram. Squeeze.
But it was quite an innocuous squeeze onto the wall, off the line.
I was trying to remember who squeezed at Donington, and I thought it was the other way. Was that Ash that squeezed at Donington, or the other way around? Someone did the squeeze and got the penalty, which I thought they shouldn't have, because it should be the one behind. But yeah, anyway, no, it wasn't. The squeeze is a part of racing, and as a following driver, you have to decide, well, he's going to squeeze me, I better back out of this. And Ash decided, he's going to squeeze me, I'm not going to back out of this. He probably thought he could kiss the wall and get away with it, but I think that he damaged the drive shaft on the front of the Ford. But it means quite a big point. So Ingram, by finishing that race, he's only 6 points behind. Everyone thinks, well, Ash Sutton's dominated this championship. We've seen his win after win. But in fact, Ingram's just 6 points behind.
Do you get any drop scores in BTCC, or do they all count?
I don't know. You're in charge of these things. I don't know. Anyway, they're always spectacular. Alton Park, great support races, the minis.
It was Porsche Super Cup or Porsche Cup. I can't remember what they.
Yeah, the Porsches round there. But they had radicals. They had radicals. I think radicals have a pit stop in the middle of the race. I'm not quite sure what that's all about. They don't seem to change drivers. They all have to pit. And this time it coincided with a safety car. So, yeah, crazy stuff.
But it was good. I like the ITV coverage.
Great commentary.
Even though they dropped us, Tiff, for our season of
ITV4.
Yeah.
Where are we appearing? Do we know yet?
We got no idea.
Like TV series. Where's that anyway?
So frustrating.
Otherwise in Britain you could have gone British GT. We're at Donington. There's so much going on in the country, wasn't there? Lamborghini won the first race. Team Barwell, my brother's team. Yeah. Well done, Barwell. Ram Racing won the second race with their Mercedes. But it's a Mercedes that still leads the championship. Scoring a 6th and a 2nd. The two C's. Otherwise, 2 C's. Must be a sponsor. 2 C's Motorsport. With Johnny Adam and James Cottingham still lead the championship on top.
DK Engineering.
Spectacular racing, whatever. Just seeing all those Lamborghinis and BMWs and Ferraris is just wonderful stuff.
Mercedes, you just mentioned DK Engineering and their AMG.
Yeah.
And also in the UK, we have British Superbikes.
Yeah, they're up a Knockhill, leaping and bouncing over the curbs. And the beer boys won again. Well, the beer man, one of the beer boys. You've got to support anyone. A beer monster Ducati. What a team. Glenn Irwin from Northern Ireland, 2 wins.
Can I just ask you a question just on British Superbikes? So we just mentioned on a red flag lap that you can't speed, but you can overtake if the car's in trouble. But on British Superbikes, on their out lap, their warm-up lap, they were overtaking each other all over the place, and they were coming to the grid at different times. Isn't that... how's that allowed? Is it?
That's fine. Yes.
But so why don't you wait until the end and then slide up through? So you got the warmest tyres and you're making everyone else wait, and then you go to your second place.
Or can you do it on the pace cut? You can do it on the out lap. Can you do it on the pace cut on the warm up lap? I don't know.
Yeah, they were doing all.
I don't know the rules in motorbikes. Tell us below. Actually, very thanks to someone that explained the TT wins on our comments last week, and I didn't realise that Dunlop had won 4. There were only actually 8. There were only actually 3 winners on the TT. The 2. Oh, see, now I've got myself into trouble. I'm going to start a story and I've forgotten the names. Who else won apart from the sidecars was run by the same? Anyway, there were only 3 winners. Everyone's a winner. Everyone that survives TT is a winner. The beer monster Ducati of Dan Irwin. He crashed while leading, dropped it at the hairpin in race 2, allowing Kyle Ride to win for Yamaha. But now, actually, it's all close to the top of the championship. Irwin is now 3rd in the championship points. Kyle Ride at Yamaha 2nd. And Tommy Bridewell and the other beer monster Ducati is still leading the championship. All very close up in the Superbikes.
So No NASCAR, so it must be
No NASCAR.
pretty much time to tell you my Dan Ticktum story, which I hope you've all been sitting on the edge of your seats.
We'll keep it
waiting
alive.
for.
We'll talk about next week because they will bring in Formula E in the next week, and then we'll end with this dramatic conclusion.
Well, okay. Before we coming up, so I just want to say Ferrari's 100th Formula One win. Ferrari.
Red Bull.
100th.
We should have mentioned that. You're right. We should have congratulated the team.
Who had their 200th win of the weekend though? Adrian Newey had his 200th win.
And Max was same as Senna.
Yeah, but so he's much younger than what Senna was when he achieved the same number. But there's about 14 more Grand Prix a season now, so it's a statistic that is a bit skewed, but still fantastic achievement. But it still means Ferrari. So just very quickly, name me the other top four constructors. The amount of Formula Ones won by constructors. So Red Bull are fifth. Who else in the top five?
McLaren.
Yeah, second.
Lotus.
No, they're way down in sixth place. So you got Williams in fourth place. No, Williams. Then you got Mercedes, yes. Yeah. And then you got McLaren. Then you got Ferrari, massively leading with 242 wins to Red Bull's 100. So
well, they've done more races.
I know they have.
It was a stupid league, Dave.
All right. Well, this isn't stupid. This Dan Ticktum, it is stupid.
Tell
me the coming ups first. What's coming up next week?
Coming up next week. MotoGP Assen, fantastic track in Holland. We like Holland. You're a Dutchman. Really good MotoGP track. World Rally Championship in Kenya, bouncing through the dust, and then as they have thunderstorms and floods, either it's dusty or it's amazing. The NASCAR boys, after their 1 week off in about 40 weekends, are back at the 1 1/3 mile Super Speedway Nashville. Always a good race. The IMSA boys at Watkins Glen with their fabulous prototype sports cars. Watkins Glen, a really good track. The Formula Academy ladies are at Zandvoort for 3 more races. And last but by no means least, to lead us into your story of the day, the Formula E's are at Portland, which actually is a track which is boring in IndyCar. So I don't know quite what the Formula E is going to do. It's got one great big long straight, which is
Portland's
an old
Oregon.
And with a chicane, and they whittle and twiddle around to the back, and then they start the big long straight again. So unless they're going to put some chicanes in, I'm not sure how they're going to save fuel, save their battery. So anyway, the Formula E's will be at Portland, where at Portland, the big gossip that everybody's going to be talking about in the Formula E paddock is something I've never heard, and you're about to tell me.
Well, I only just found out this little post-race interview. So Dan's driving for Neo, and he's driving the car incredibly well, getting the most out of the car as he can. And his team let him down. There's no. They told him he had enough charge. He didn't have enough charge, so the team let him down. However, is this acceptable to talk to anybody, let alone your team, who, let's face it, only want the same thing as you? I'm going to play this to you, and you can.
Dan, of course, a man who was in trouble for what he said a lot of his career, but seemed to have zipped his mouth the last couple of years. But
well, you say that only in April. Just before Berlin, what was the race there? He said about Jake Dennis. He said he's pathetic and childish, but. So he's got some.
Are you going to play it then? Are you going to play it?
Here we go. Here we go. Well, there's a bit of swearing as well. So. For the
driver on this screen. I'm telling you that.
No, that didn't come out at all. It's gurgled. Where that sounded.
Okay.
Steak.
We'll
play. Don't talk to me. Anyone. No one talk to me. I don't want to fucking hear it. Leave me alone.
All right. Good. Don't bring it back.
It could have been happening for 3 laps, and I have no fucking idea. Roberto, if you're on the intercom, tell my taxi to be ready in 15 minutes. I'm getting out of it. Can someone tell me if I need to weigh, and don't just say yes. Can we find out if I actually need to weigh?
Yes, go to weigh. You still finished P11, so there's potential of any penalty in front.
The driver on this.
So. Maybe
get my taxi ready for 15 minutes.
I think that's
what was the beginning of it? It wasn't that clear. What was his beef then?
His beef was no other driver could get out of that car what I got out of that car.
Okay.
So it's look, we've been there. The frustration, the emotion, the adrenaline.
Well, the trouble, it was his sort of last chance saloon, wasn't it? I feel the troubles he had in other series, and he had this professional, but he is in a bad team. So he's halfway through his second year in a car that's not going to win the race.
What's he
so
thinking? I know he's not thinking, because that's the problem. Because who's going to take him on? Who's going to say, you know what, this is a...
Well, that's why I said this was his last
dream.
chance to live. This was his last chance, because he's ranted at his teams in Formula 2 and Formula 3. And
I just don't like that. But look, who knows what happened afterwards? Because he might have got out of the car and said to everyone, "I am such a dick. I'm so sorry, guys. You know, thanks for everything." And who knows? Because we haven't had the follow up. But that's a bit nasty. I think.
You know when you broadcast things like the BBC, you have to say, "We asked Mr. Ticktum to comment, but he refused to comment." You haven't got that.
No, we
did.
Did
you approach Mr. Ticktum?
He's more than welcome to comment below or contact us on Twitter. We get abuse anyway. Our mate Mr. Lopez.
We've upset Holland and we've upset Mexico now, so now we're going to upset Britain's Ticktum. So,
well, I've always said he's a phenomenal driver, but he's just...
We're just saying it as we seeing it, everybody. We're just saying it as we see it.
We better go, because we're getting in trouble now. See you next week. Thanks for joining.
Cheers.
Cheers.